Okay, and we're live. This is Team Awesome with the United States Women's National Soccer Team. My name is Thomas Cherry.
I'm Evercord.
I'm Bridget Diaz.
I'm Amanda Nazario.
Excellent. So here we go. Okay, so our project is about the U.S. Women's National Team. And since 2017, they have been a pretty dominant force in the world of soccer. They have a record of 58 wins with only 4 losses. And they are also only the second team to go back-to-back World Cup champions, the other team being Germany, and no other team has done that since the tournament began in 1991. The 2018 team is the real dominant one that had all the star players. Some milestones in that team. That franchise recorded its 500th victory, which is a lot of wins. It's for only being around since the 80s. And they scored 65 goals in the 2018 season, which is about 3.25 goals per game, and only allowing 10 goals total. So, like, they were just dominating their competition. And then they also set a record in the 2019 World Cup by scoring 13 goals against Thailand, who didn't score any, and that was the largest margin of victory for a World Cup game.
So why does the U.S. women's national team not receive equal pay? This is a critical question that we will be addressing throughout our analysis and further into the presentation. The U.S. women's national team has been facing a pay discrimination, and compared to the U.S. men's national team, for example, they get paid far less than them, even though they all train and compete for the same goal. This will be shown later in the presentation.
So the U.S. women's national team is part of a lawsuit right now against the Soccer Federation. And then players of the suit are saying that the Soccer Federation is engaging in institutionalized gender discrimination. Since filing for the lawsuit, the team went on to win the World Cup and having fans chant equal pay from the fans, which is pretty awesome that people are getting behind this for them. And the Equal Pay Act is what they're going after, and it's basically covering everyone to be paid for the same, doing the same work. Doesn't matter whether if their sex is different or anything, but equal pay, equal work is all.
So leading off of that, what Thomas mentioned, how much less do the women actually make? As of 2016, when this issue was first brought about, they found that for the women and men's, if they were to win the exact same amount of games, the women would be paid only 38% of what the men are being paid, which we can see by the graphic below, denoting the women as the pink color and men as the blue. And so we kind of see this as just the impact of historical discrimination through the social constructs that we see that create these unfair expectations for the women athletes. We see that the great success of the USWNT, but at the same time, this success isn't supported in comparison to their male counterparts. In this lawsuit that they filed, Molly Levinson, the U.S. Women's National Team spokesperson, noted in every instance for a friendly or competitive match, the women players were offered less pay than their male counterparts. This is the very definition of gender discrimination, and of course the players rejected it. So we see right here, the root of this issue is solely based off of gender. The women's national team is so much more successful than the men's, but they're not reflected that in both their opportunities, their facilities, and especially in their pay, which we're seeing right now. So how'd they go about this change? The theory we connected this to in our class was the liberal feminist theory. We see this on how it focuses on the individual and equal rights, the similarity between the sexes, and how they want to create change politically through legislature and judicial statutes. Secret was a company that supported the women's national team heavily. They were saying we were compelled to join the players to help create long-term change and to create real change. basically, the importance of this is these women athletes are using their social media presence too to actually voice their opinion. And with that, that puts pressure on these companies that support them to not only say that they support, but start putting money where their mouth is to actually create real change. Another quote I just included from Megan Rapinoe herself. Maybe this can be a case people cite in their own cases against employers or whatever it may be to strengthen their case. Basically, what I'm saying is Megan Rapinoe wants to bring this about because in law, a lot of cases are based off of previous cases. And by presenting this concern that the women's national team has, she wants to make a lasting impact on not only women facing discrimination, but Megan Rapinoe herself is gay. I think this would be a great parallel and transition into both fighting for not only women's rights, but minorities, including the LGBTQ community as well.
So the first course concept that relates to this article and the idea in general is hegemonic masculinity, and is defined as the idea that men try to dominate over women in society, sports, the workforce, and other aspects of life. And this class concept relates to the United States women's national team and the article because the team is battling to be paid equally to the men's team and close the wage gap between the men and the women's teams. And a quote from the article states, in July 2019, the USSF President Carlos Cordero released an opening letter citing what he described as extensive analysis of 10 years of financial data. And he said that the data showed from 2010 to 2018, the women's players were paid $34.1 million in salary and game bonuses compared to the men's team, which received $26.4 million in the same time period. And he was stating that the men and women's teams operate with the separate collective bargaining agreements and pay structures, but representatives for the women's team said this was utterly false and had no data to back up what the statements he was saying how the women were paid more than the men. And so this is just an example of how the men, an example, Carlos, who were running the USSF, want to control the salaries of the women's team and not allow them to have an equal salary when compared to the men's teams. And ironically, the women's team has won more World Cups when compared to the men's. And I believe, if anything, the women's team should be paid more than the men's if they're already winning more games and tournaments and titles. And so the second course concept that relates to this article I found was stealth feminism. And stealth feminism is defined as the way in which sports are an arena feminist questions emerge, where feminist principles and goals can be articulated, and where feminist strategies for change achieved, all without an explicit declaration of those questions, principles, goals, or achievements as feminists. And I believe this relates to the article because the feminist goal being achieved by the women's national team is equal pay for women and the advancement of closing the wage gap. And so if the world of sports begins paying their male and female athletes equally, then females in other jobs or businesses can set that example that sports have demonstrated in other fields in the business world, may begin to pay their female workers just as much as they pay their male workers. And as Everett was saying in the article, Megan Rapinoe states, I think women can take it to any realm where there are men and women being paid and closing that wage gap. And so in this way, the female athletes were stealth feminists because they accomplished the goal of equal pay in the world of sports, all while setting the standard for how other corporations should treat their female workers and accomplishing the feminist goal of closing the gender wage gap. And so the last course concept that related to the article was social structure, and a social structure is defined, or social structure consists of the established patterns of relationships and social arrangements that take shape as people live, work, and play with each other. And I believe this class concept relates to the article because society has normalized a patriarchal system in all realms of life, whether that be men stereotypically being the CEO, the doctor, the lawyer, or in this case, the star athlete. And so this concept relates to the article because for many centuries, the male-dominated social structure of the world has given off the idea that men are always in power and should have the majority of control when it comes to all aspects of life, including the decisions that need to be made for a woman's life, an example, their pay. So this led to society allowing for so many years to have men be paid more than women in the exact same job. And ever since the women's rights movement during the 1960s, there's been a spark in females all across the world to fight for their rights that men have been controlling for far too long. And so in this case, the women's soccer team fighting for equal pay is an example of women rewriting history and demanding the respect they deserve and rewriting the social structure.
And here are our references that we use to build this presentation. And thank you, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.